Hello, Mike here from Joe and Mike's award-winning Virtual Tours of Scotland. Thank you very much for joining us again on our usual live Monday. Well, it's not Monday, it's on Wednesday, but it's kind of like our Monday tour. It's an extra special tour that we're actually doing today. So please feel free to comment and ask questions and so on. Very much appreciate that as it's a live tour. So today we are in Glamis and we're going to have a tour of Glamis Village. Not always the most usual thing to do when you come here, because the castle, of course, is a major attraction in Scotland, but we will be talking about the castle as well. But Glamis, so first of all, the name Glamis, Glamis, what does it mean, really? So we can go back to Celtic Gaelic, and we think perhaps it means open jaws. Open jaws, what does that mean? Well, it could mean a couple of things, because there are several rivers that actually flow through the village of Glamis, and early settlements would always go to where there was a good water source, and it could be the meeting of these rivers in a formation that looks like open jaws. Or because this was very much a maker's place as well, it could have been to do with a carpenter's vice and the closing of the jaws. But whatever it is a way back in history, but these are a couple of explanations of what it might be. So we're going to take a little walk down to the origins of Glamis, and it's down this little path, and this was even before the castle. Even before there was a hunting lodge here for the Scottish kings, there was this very special place we're going to take you to. So we're going to walk down the steps, okay? And here is a little milestone, if you like, a little stone pointing towards St Fergus well. Now, the well is named after St Fergus, who was an 8th century Celtic missionary who brought Christianity to this area. Now, Christianity had come to Scotland in the 7th century. It had been here before that even. So he was one of the early missioners carrying the message of Christianity. And this is called St Fergus's Well. You may have come across the name St Fergus before. He's the patron saint of Wick. But St Fergus also has his name, the oil fields in the North Sea. There are St Fergus oil fields, and there is a town called St Fergus up in the northeast of Scotland. Now, St Fergus, he was carrying the Christian word here, and he lived in a cave. Now, if you look at the stonework here, you'll see just above the well, and this is a well. It's not coming from the water on the river. You can see all this stone here. Now, there was a little cave where St Fergus actually stayed before the church developed, and we're going to show you the church later on. And he would be baptizing people here. It would also be an ancient Celtic meeting place where people would be helping each other and meeting in community spirit. So again, we know that the Pictish peoples and the Celtic peoples going back to the 8th century and before that were very sophisticated. And if you remember our chat with Paul MacDonald on the sword making, he was saying that as well, that maybe we don't give credit enough to how forward looking they were, and they've probably a whole lot of things they knew about that we will never know. So early Christian site, the well of St Fergus, and this was really the start of everything.
And if I recall, St Fergus was the holy man that St Mungo had to take his body, driven by 2 oxen, the story goes, so the myth of St Mungo, and when the 2 oxen stopped, that's where he was to bury or establish a church in the west. So perhaps there is a link between St Fergus here.
Perhaps there's a link, yeah.
Mungo.
So we are coming up the hill. This is just on the border of the entrance to Glamis Castle. If we're going to see Glamis Castle, we'd be going down to the right, but we're not. We're going up to the left today, which is the village, yeah.
Just like to point out these little things here. Mike.
Yeah. Today, it is still a very Christian, very meaningful site for people to commemorate loved ones who have passed on. And I can fully understand that because it's so beautiful down there. You feel really there is some special spiritual atmosphere about it. So I spoke about St Fergus, and there was an early church here that developed, but there's nothing been found of the early Christian Celtic church. What we have found in this area are lots of Pictish stones that date back to about the 8th and 9th century. So we know it was a very important site, and it was raised up. And if you'd followed our little tour of Kirriemuir when we had the local historian David tell us about the oval shape of the religious site in Kirriemuir with the churches, well, it was very common for Celtic peoples to have this sort of oval layout, and we can maybe see something of that here when we're looking at the kirk. I'm not going to call it church because it's known as Glamis Kirk. So,
hey, we have two locals here.
Two locals, yeah. And maybe you would like to introduce them, Joe?
Very well. So, what's your name?
Aileen.
Aileen. So, Aileen, I had a wee conversation with you earlier, and you've got some people in Australia you'd like to say hello to.
Oh yes, there's my son Johnny. If he's going to be listening, he might. And I'm hoping he will.
Yeah.
And your daughter.
And your daughter?
And Elspeth, yes.
Okay.
They're both in Sydney.
Uh-huh. Well, you never know, they might be sitting up late watching.
They might. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
And your name is?
Barbara
Barbara what?
Macmillan.
Uh-huh. And where are you from, Barbara?
I'm from Monifieth, which is about 14 miles from here.
Uh-huh. And do you have any brothers and sisters, Barbara?
I'm actually related to Jo. I'm Jo's sister. And I regularly walk in Glamis with my friend Aileen, and we just decided we'd come today because Jo and Mike were doing their tour.
Thank you very much.
And it's great to have local support, even if it's from family. It's nice to have local support as well. So say hello to everybody. Give him a wave.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. I would say hello to Ewan, our son Ewan, who's in London as well. Maybe we're watching it as well.
Yes, you will probably
Okay.
today, actually.
Right.
So it's quite a beautiful little church with quite a complicated history because it's from different periods. Now, a later church, when St Fergus was here, it would have been like mud and wattle and wood and stuff. It would have been a very impermanent, temporary structure which would not have lasted long. And we haven't really found any remains dating back to these times, but we do know from the 13th century there was a church beginning to develop, which was going to be built in stone in the 13th century, and it was dedicated to St Fergus. But again, a lot of that is lost in the foundations of a later building of the 18th century. But we're going to have a little walk into the churchyard.
It's the only one I've ever seen that looks like a fish. Well, it is a fish, the shape of a fish in the weather vane. Normally it's a cockerel, but up there it's a fish. We might get a better view of that later on.
So we're seeing in the wall here, there's a wee bit of a Gothic, gruesome influence here. Well, it's not, it's a human skull and crossbones, but most likely that came from an ancient Christian cross slab stone, and it was just used for a different purpose, repurposed if you like, to build a wall, and that wasn't very uncommon in these areas. So we're going to...
These were the memento mori, just to remind people of their mortality. A lot of people think it's all to do with devil worshipping, but it's not. It's just simply to remind people that unto dust thou shalt return.
The graveyard, the oldest stones in this graveyard go back to the 17th century, and we've usually got people like brewers, like bakers, like merchants, like farmers and so on. And again, you can see the typical sands of time in what is like an egg timer there as well, which is very common, and the angel with the wings at the top. And this was prior to people using lettering because it was very symbolic. You've got another one here as well. So these are tending to be 17th century. There's also a lot of 18th and 19th century burials in here too. Glamis became the town it was when the castle was being extended by the 9th Earl in the 18th century.
And that was the Earl of?
That was the Earl of Strathmore. And they wanted to clear out the workers. It was a bit of a settlement where the castle was going to be extended, so they had to build a new place, which was an estate village, and that is what Glamis came from in the 18th century. So much of the village, really, the oldest buildings will date back to the 18th century. But here in the churchyard, we've got an older building. And if we look at this here, building here, that's the one with, I think we've got a lion up the top. Well, it's a bit weathered. But this is the Strathmore Aisle. Now, this dates back to the 15th century. And the very first Lord Glamis, his wife, who was Isabella Ogilvie, after he died, decided that she was going to have this aisle built in the 15th century for his interment. And today, the remains of both the first Lord Glamis and his wife Isabella are here. Now, this is the oldest visible part of the building, and it is not part of the later 18th century church which we were looking at. This would have actually been part of the 13th century church, which was taken down and replaced in the 18th century. So you've got a little bit of fragment of ancient history here today. Now, if you look here at the window, this window is dedicated to the 17th Earl of Strathmore, and his name was Fergus, and his wife is still alive, and she's the Dowager Lady Strathmore Mary, and she had this window installed, and it's very much in a modern glass design effect, and it actually shows the connection with the fishes and the loaves of bread as Christian symbols here as well. So this today, underneath here, is still the burial vault of the Strathmore family. And you know, our present Queen's great-grandfather, we often just think about the male side of the Queen's family, but her mother, of course, was Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, and her father is buried here, and also other members of the Strathmore family. So, beautiful place. I mean, it's steeped in Christian history. But we're going to go to a gravestone that has got quite a bit of significance and connects with the mercantile image of Glamis as being a place that had annual markets for the sale of goods, like pots and pans and food and eggs and things like that. But it had a speciality in the 19th century, and maybe some of you have heard of this speciality, and it was called the Forfar Bridie. The Bridie, yes.
Somebody was just talking about Scottish food is good too. Yes, and we all love the Forfar Bridie.
And I don't know if any of you have tasted a Forfar Bridie, but it's actually in the shape of a horseshoe, and it's filled with minced meat and onion and spices, and a bridie can be really addictive, especially at lunchtime. Yeah. Very filling. But here, on this grave, here, we have got Margaret Bridie, and this was the lady who invented the recipe for the Forfar Bridie and sold it out of the corner shop in Glamis. Margaret Bridie. Now, others lay claim to the Bridie. I mean, this is Forfar, this is Kirriemuir. They don't let you away with much here. And somebody, it is said, acquired the recipe, and this person called Mr. Jolly from Forfar, and accredited himself with inventing the Forfar Bridie. But we know different. It was Glamis where it came from. Okay, so Margaret
Bridie,
creator
of the Forfar Bridie.
Absolutely.
And what was that expression said in Dundee? If it's got one hole, it's got onions in it. If it's got two holes, it has no onions in it.
And have you got the right Dundee
I have the wrong accent. I've got the wrong accent for this. Okay. Shall I try it?
Try it, yeah.
I'll hae twa bridies and a ningen and a no. A ningen and a na. So it's like, I'll have two bridies with an onion one as well.
Good try. I'm not going to attempt
and a ningen and a na. I'm not a Dundonian, so I can't do that. Dundonian accent.
Not going to attempt it even. So the church is still a parish church today, and interestingly enough, the Strathmore family are Episcopalians. They're not Presbyterians. But this is such an ancient burial place that it is still used by the Strathmore family. But they do not worship here because they have got a chapel inside Glamis Castle. Okay, but big connections. So 18th century church, beautiful inside. We can't get inside today, all because of COVID and things like that. But worth visiting.
Is Strathmore also a whisky? Yes, it is.
Yes. We're going to look over the fence of this house, this manse. You're not going to see it very well because there is shade, but there's a big Pictish stone that goes back to the 9th century in there. And on one side of it is inscribed figures and marks, and which are very ancient. There's actually a serpent and there's a fish. And there's mirrors, the double discs that are very familiar and very common to Pictish stone markings. And on the other side is the cross. It's called a cross slab, and it's full of interlacing design. But spookily enough, on the other side, there's a cauldron. And out of the cauldron are coming human legs. Now, we know there are associations with Glamis and Forfar with witchcraft. I'm not going to go into too much detail there, but possibly there was some connections there. But also two bearded figures in long cloaks wielding battle axes. So that is the ancient Pictish stone. It is a historic site, but then again, we can't go in there because it's somebody's private garden, although on open doors days, you can get in to have a closer look.
So it is a scheduled monument, and they are looking after it.
They're looking after
it's
it.
with the Picts, and the later on with the later stones, Mike, you have this where they're just adopting Christianity, but always they still look like they're hedging their bets because they've got all the pagan symbols on one side, and then they've got the Christian symbols on the other. So they're just at that moment saying, "Oh, maybe this Christian thing, maybe it'll take off. We don't know." So just hedging their bets. Make sure they keep the old religion going as well, the pagan religions going, or pagan symbolism, and the Christian symbolism.
Yeah, having a foot in both camps, but also economy of use as well, because there was a stone that had been put together and refined, and why not just use it for what is around now? So another reason why it was reused. So we'll have another wee look.
Let's see if we can get a wee picture of it on this side.
Another look on this side, yeah.
See if we can get the cross on it. I'm not sure if we can.
You can maybe just see around the corner there with the interlacing.
But it is so interesting that the whole culture, apart from the art and the inscriptions, was subjugated because they didn't have the written language. They didn't leave us. Well, the written language that we do have in some places is written in Latin, so they've adopted or they took on the written language of the invaders, whether it was Celtic versions of the Gaelic, or whether it was the Romans, but they never left us anything apart from their art.
Yes.
So a lot of the history of it, I always think there's going to be a Rosetta Stone that's going to be discovered one day, and it's going to open up the whole thing about the Pictish culture, which is still so prevalent all up the east coast of Scotland as well.
Yeah, that's why this place is here, it would be because of the Picts, these ancient peoples. They would have identified the meeting of the waters here with the Glamis burn and the other burns. And then this was a place also for milling, and we haven't mentioned that because there is a working water mill here as well, which originally was used for milling linen, milling the flax to make linen. So again, like Kirriemuir, it had a strong connection with the textiles. But also in the higher lands here, we have an area called the Binks. Now, I don't know if you've heard that before, Binks, Binks, and it was a seated area on a hillside. Now, we don't know, it could have been there was various celebrations or events that these ancient people would celebrate where they would have a gathering place, and so it also could have been where bees were, the Binks. So you come across these old words here in this part. So we're going to pass, I think I'm going to pass the mic to Joe, and I'll still be behind the microphone, so we're going to have a wee look at the Bothy Experience.
As we were walking through the village earlier, we came across the Bothy Experience, and as we were walking along, we just wondered maybe we could have a word with anybody who's got anything to do with it. And of course, along comes Kim. Now, Kim is the owner. You are the Bothy Experience, so you are the Gin Bothy.
I am the Gin Bothy, and I'm delighted that I was here today when you were coming to the Glamis.
And
Yeah, come on in.
hang on a minute, because we have to do the exchange of the phone. So we'll go back and forth. We'll just do COVID rules.
Yeah.
So Kim, we literally just met you this morning. What's your second name?
So it's Kim Cameron.
Kim Cameron. And you've been how long and have you had the Bothy here?
So the Bothy's been here since 2013. We've actually been on site for, this will be our 5th year now, here in Glamis. So I was delighted you were passing when I was here.
And you call it the Bothy Experience. So obviously not obviously, but I'm getting the feeling it all centres around gin.
Well, it's called Bothy Experience because there's a little bit more to us than just gin. So we're an award-winning, one of the smallest spirit producers in Scotland, but now the most award-winning. So I happen to make, in my Bothy, I make a range of gin liqueurs and rum. But the Bothy Experience hopefully lets people see a little bit more about Bothy culture, Bothy traditions, Bothy songs, and what makes Bothy and Bothy as a national symbol of Scotland important to us.
And you want to explain that for our viewers what the Bothy is. So start from scratch.
Yeah.
Start as if we don't know anything, okay?
So Bothy in the Highlands of Scotland is a home in the hills. It's a place where you would go if you needed shelter from when the weather changes. In the lowlands of Scotland here, it's where single men lived before they were married, and they worked on the farms or they worked on the coastal Bothys, and they worked there to maybe 14 till the age of 18. And when they met a girl, they would get a cottage or a cotter house. But the Bothy is, I suppose, a shelter, a home in the hills, and I happen to make gin in mine.
Okay. Because I know the Bothys where you can go in and there used to be dried eggs, there used to be water, there used to be shelter, and if you're up climbing in the mountains and the weather changed, you could always take shelter in there. And also the shepherds in the hills could take as well.
So there are hundreds of Bothys all over Scotland and the UK, and a lot are managed by the Mountain Bothy Association, but they're on private land and are open and free for people to visit. You take with you all the items you would need for the night, so your firewood or your coal, and it's tradition to leave something for the next visitor, whether that be a little nip to keep them warm during the night.
Okay. I have memories of making the worst omelette from dried eggs ever.
You never know, and you never know who you're going to meet in the Bothy. So you could meet students, you could meet the laird, you never know, and it really is an essential shelter in the Highlands.
And you cannot exclude anyone from the Bothy, I understand as well.
No, there's always room for one more, and here we have our 2 visitor rooms, free and open to visit like a Bothy. One about Bothy beginnings, about how I started and my gin journey, but also about Bothys. And I guess I never imagined it was my job to tell people in Scotland, let alone the world, about Bothys, but that's kind of what's happened. So we have a Bothy Tales room as well here, which is all about Bothys.
Yeah. And of course, when you went to the Bothys, people would have instruments, people could tell stories, they've got a bit of a storytelling history behind it as well. So it fits right in, and I understand you've got a little group in today as well.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to come in and say hello. Bothy's in the northeast of Scotland. Bothy songs and Bothy ballads are a big part of our culture and tradition. So Bothy songs would be shared round the fire with a wee dram and or a nip of whisky or gin or rum. And we have 2 visitor rooms here that we do tastings in. So we do the Spirit of the Bothy, which is our spirits of gin and rum. And also just a great place to connect, disconnect to reconnect in a way, and get people round the table and talking, eating and drinking good traditional Scottish food.
Switching phones off, getting back to the land. Sort of. Can we have a wee look? Is that possible?
And a little bit more about the guardianship of the land, which is very much how we see ourselves. And there's film in here that talks about the traditions and the etiquette of Bothy's. And I guess in our generation, if we lose some of these things, there's something quite special being lost. So this is the old smiddy, the forge where horses would have been come to be shod, and a place where stories were often shared. This is the old National Trust Museum, and it was empty when I took it over, and I'd like to think that we're carrying on the tradition and letting people know a little bit more about the northeast of Scotland.
Now, we've been telling people that you can go and visit Glamis Castle, but do not miss out on the village as well. Come and see the village as well.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's, you know, the building beside us is 1700. It's a fantastic, quiet, peaceful place with huge heritage of plants, and the gardeners, local volunteers support the gardens here in Glamis, and a beautiful place from thatched cottages to, it's like the place time forgot, and we feel really lucky to be living and working and able to showcase a place like this.
It's almost like a movie set.
Well, it has been filmed in lots of different things. There's lots of private clients will book out here and come in for tastings and just shut the gate, and as you'll see in one of the tasting rooms, just disconnect for a wee moment. So come on in, I'll show you.
We've had a wee question from Louise, and she's asking, what is the difference between a nip and a dram?
Well, Louise, there's not a lot. Depending on the part of Scotland that you're in, a dram would traditionally be a dram of whisky. But because I don't make whisky, I make gin and rum, you would have a nip, which is a small, like, shot, something just to give you a little inner glow.
And I was thinking that drams were introduced when they started to make taxation on whisky, so it was actually a government measurement, whereas a nip was just like, you just unscrewed it, filled the lid, and that was your nip of whisky.
Yep.
I don't know if it's right or not. But
well, I would say that. Certainly in this part of the country it would be a nip, but you would always talk about whisky as a dram.
Yep.
And I wish I could like whisky, I just don't. So I created a range of spirits that you can actually drink neat on ice. Our gunshot gin, you have it literally like a nip, you just have it straight on ice. So I'm just going to open this door and you'll see in.
Okay.
Ladies, do you mind if somebody just pops their head in to see what this wee room would look like?
Oh, no, absolutely.
Come on in.
Hello, ladies.
Hey.
So what do we have here?
So this is
We have a bride to be.
A bride to be right here.
Okay. Do you want to come up and have a wee? This is unrehearsed. We didn't know. So what's your name?
Katie.
Katie. And Katie, where are you from?
I'm from London, but I'm getting married in Dundee. I live in Dundee.
Okay. And this is your hen party, or?
It is. Yeah, it's my hen do.
And who have we got round the table? Now you've forgotten all their names.
Yeah. So it's Taj, Rhiannon, Cara. This is my mother-in-law Elaine, my sister Carla, and Chloe.
Hello. So where's all the London posse?
Oh, that's me. Yeah.
And all the rest of the Dundonians.
Yeah.
I'm the odd one out.
Okay, I'm going to do a quiz here. Who's got the best Dundonian accent?
Well, Elaine, that's you.
Me and say Dundee.
Okay, can you tell us how you say it? An-ing and an-aw.
And niggin and an aw.
Probably to pick up on the microphone, but I'll come round. Hang on. Because we've been talking about bridies earlier. So.
Are you wanting a pair?
A pay, I, and a-ning
A niggin and an aw.
So we just had a wee. We're Joe and Mike's virtual tour, so we're broadcasting live from New Zealand, Australia, up to Vancouver, Denmark. They're all. Some of them are having their coffee and croissant. Some of them are having their hot chocolate. So say hello to everybody. Hello. We just crashed your party. Apologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
And when we're doing our tours, magical things happen. And we don't know what it is.
You
Yeah.
just never know who you're going to meet at the Bothy, and that's a prime example. You just never know.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you popped along today.
What about the song? I thought you had a wee song.
Yeah, come on up and I'll sing it just so
Yeah.
they don't need to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There. So I wrote this wee song about 5 years ago, and it's sung in a traditional northeast Bothy ballad way. But I wrote this song about Bothys because I couldn't quite believe the number of people in Scotland that didn't know about Bothys, and all the people that left Scotland 100 years ago, Nova Scotia, Canada and America, they love Bothy songs as much as we do here. So it goes a wee bit like this. Noo the Bothys aye ways cheery wi' the stories o' the day. Oh, work and love and laughter and the lassies' teasing ways. But at nicht when I's quiet and just a crackling o' the peat, and the songs o' long ago and echoes o' the past. For the Bothy offers comfort, aye despite its draughty door, and I know that in the future I'll miss its flag-stained flare. For nae matter far ye wander, and nae matter far ye roam, it's the Bothy days we long for, those days o' long ago. And whether highland, moorland, lowland, aye the Bothy's aye ways there. It offers us same comfort when the weather's nae sae fair. One room, one bed and a kettle swing and a kiss and a book o' dreams, and songs o' long ago and echoes o' the past. So let's raise a toast to the Bothy lads and their life in the days o' old. Whether poteen, gin or whisky, it's a life we aye behold. For nae matter far ye travel, and nae matter far ye go, it's the Bothy days we long for, those days o' long ago. Slanjava.
Slancha.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
We've
you
got
very
lots
much.
of-
That's absolutely
we've got lots
brilliant.
of love hearts coming up.
Oh.
And thumbs up, and they're saying great voice, great ballads. So thank you
Well,
very much.
do you know,
Jill.
we have to keep sharing these things or
Yeah.
they're just going to go. So
Yeah.
the more people that sing Bothy and can appreciate Scottish music, I think the better.
And I think particularly our friends up in Nova Scotia and anywhere in Canada,
Yeah.
they've got Scottish background, to probably recognise the beat and the rhythm of it as well, because it's very much of the Bothy tradition.
Yeah, definitely. And the northeast, the women's songs from the northeast, from Dundee, the weavers' songs, the way the women worked was the rhythm of the song. In the fishing communities on the northeast of Scotland, the fishing women would gut the herring, and they would be singing alongside the gutting of the herring. And for us, that's really important to keep that all alive. And
Yeah.
the fact that I make spirit, if the spirit of our gin can help keep these things alive with song and tradition, then yeah, that would be great. And one day we'll get it to Nova Scotia and Canada. Alberta, I'm trying. And America, we're nearly there. So yeah, one day hopefully you can get the gin Bothy there too.
And what is your brand called? What is the
It's gin Bothy.
Gin Bothy?
Gin-
Gin Bothy.
Gin Bothy. We make gin in the Bothy, so we do an original gin, heather, milk thistle, Scots pine and rosemary, 100% natural and sugar-free. And our gunshot gin, which nothing to do with guns, just gives you an inner glow. And you drink it, as I say, neat. That's the one that most people that visit us always want to take home.
Excellent. And they can also got you. We'll put your details up on when we upload it as well. But they can just Google Bothy Gin.
Yeah, so it's just www.ginbothy.co.uk, and we do free UK mainland delivery. I'm working on export, but we're nearly there with that. So hopefully, but yeah, free UK delivery anywhere, and so just Gin Bothy.
Well, if the Chancellor of the Exchequer is looking right now, get it sorted, Chancellor, will you?
We're nearly there. But listen, thank you so much, and thanks to all your followers and readers, and hopefully they can sing some Bothy hot songs at home.
And when they come over to Glamis Castle, make sure you pop in as well, because we want to thank you for introducing us to this, because this was, again, impromptu. There was no rehearsal for this.
No.
And we just bumped into you and thought, can we do it? And you said, yeah, you've been so amenable, and we want to thank you very much, Kim. Thank you very much.
You. Have a good walk.
Thank
We've
you.
already.
I mean, we have been sort of focusing a lot on craftsmen and craftswomen, people keeping traditions alive. We have had a lot of requests from other people, so we have got our diaries getting quite full, so we hope to bring you more of the traditional trades, the traditional arts and crafts that people are working hard to keep alive in Scotland. Even during the pandemic period, people seem to be working a lot more closely together. There's a lot more cooperation, I think, between different parts of the local industries to keep traditions alive. And we're going to do a wee handover because we want to introduce someone else. But if Mike can just turn around and just get these wee cottages here, because they're absolutely stunning.
And just look at the flowers, and these are old farm steadings, like cottages for the workers on the estates who would have occupied these, and the wonderful standpipe here, and the colours are just great. The old red sandstone stone built, and the slate roofs, very ancient, 18th century.
And this is all part of the planned villages. Now, through Scotland and the part of the great agricultural improvement, you did have a lot of these planned villages where people traditionally would be living in what they called clachans, which are a bit of a higgledy-piggledy little villages that had no facilities whatsoever. And it was seen part of the great improvement in the middle of the 1700s, where artisans who would work for the big estates were attracted to stay, because there was a mass movement out of the country. In order to attract people to stay, they wanted good living conditions, and these would have been top of their grade back in the 1700s as well.
Some great comments we're getting, Joe, one from Raffaella saying that we're making our soul lighter in these really difficult, rough times.
Yeah.
So,
and you know what, we've had that quite a lot, Mike, about people who have been quite isolated, or people who are not feeling, not being able to come to Scotland, who've got an affinity for Scotland, or even people just at home who the feedback we get is that we're actually doing something good for them as well. So it's good for us to get out. Things are vastly improving. The changes that we've seen in our own country, we're hoping that other countries are going to be opening up as well. I know some people are going into lockdown again. We're going through a great purple phase at the moment, which seems to be really good. Both Mike and I have managed to get down to London to see shows, which have been great. But the country is opening up as well. We're going to do a wee handover because Mike is going to interview someone else who we've got lined up here in the village.
We're coming up to this very special place in Glamis, which is the Glamis Gallery, and we're going to have a word with local artist Jonathan Mitchell.
Hey, buddy.
We're going to see.
What's his name? What's his name?
Hello.
Say hello.
Oh. We switch. Is that it? That's it. Good. Here we go. Could be a wee bit dark in here, so we just want to make sure we get enough light. I love this. I must say, this paint tube here, with the Celtic shape of the paint coming out, is just fab. I love it.
Well, if I better do it from this side, Mike?
I'll just get out of the way and I'll put my mask on. Saying that Jonathan, I remember seeing you on the TV, and your style of art, you're a figurative painter, you're a very expressive, colourful painter. You trained at the same college, I think, as I did in Dundee, Duncan O'Jordanston College of Art, and you're very successful, and his work is just fantastic. So maybe just a little information about yourself, and where you come from, and what you're doing at the moment with the gallery here as well. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, well, like you say, I was trained at Duncan O'Jordanston in Dundee, so I've sort of stayed in the area really for all my whole career. I graduated about 30 years ago, just over 30 years ago. That instance, the Sky Arts Landscape Painter of the Year, that was my 15 minutes of fame when I won my wild card heat for the day in the pouring rain of Loch Fyne with all the midges and things. But generally, I don't really have time to court publicity to the same extent. I'm busy, have been a practicing artist now for 30 years, and now, kind of against my better judgment, I've also got involved in running an art gallery. But as a consequence of that, I've actually got a really nice studio workspace comes along with this project here, which is Glamis Gallery.
Do you think if you could walk up this way, you might be able to see inside your
atelier? I was going to suggest, if it was possible, maybe to bring one or two of your pictures out and to show if that would be possible to have a look at. Yeah, but we can
gravitate down this way then.
And we'll go up near your studio, yeah?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so this is quite a new venture, I think, here, isn't it? This gallery.
This will be 2 years in November that the gallery's been going, but of course we've had the great big interruptions of the pandemic lockdowns. But so 2 years, and it's gradually been building in spite of all the issues that we've had with obviously the whole economy being shut down. We've noticed this year that the staycation thing is paying off. Although we are missing the kind of global clientele that you would normally get attracted to a place like Glamis Castle, because it's such an iconic visitor attraction. But I'll bring some work out.
Yeah, please. Yeah, that would be great. Subject matter here is awesome, and it's relatively undiscovered, some of the areas that we know as artists, and that's why I enjoy being a tourist guide so much as well, because I sometimes take people into areas that are painted, little hidden corners. But I think Jonathan, he's got one of his pictures here.
This is a fairly subject matter I've revisited again and again over the years. This is actually Arbroath Harbour.
Yeah,
It's the first time I've gone back to paint there again.
Great.
Generally, I do find there is sufficient to find to paint around here between Angus and Eastern Perthshire. I now live in Eastern Perthshire, just about 12 miles away, and there's an endless source of subject matters for an artist. It's such a diverse county. You go from the coastal areas like Arbroath. In about an hour's drive you can be surrounded by Munros, having just crossed the Highland boundary fault line into the Highlands. So it's an extremely compact area. So I'm not surprised that there are a terrific number of artists and craftspeople in this neck of the woods.
And do you find the light particularly different in the East Coast? And I've heard, and I'm not an artist, but there people went down to Kirkcudbright down in the southwest.
That's right,
because of the light, and then people also gravitated towards the East Coast and Fife. In that area.
I think there must be subtle differences. There's bound to be regional differences in the light, as to do with the proximity of the sea, etc., in the mountains. I mean, because I work primarily from photos. The whole issue of the light, as long as the sun's shining. You know, I'm happy as an artist gathering reference material. I mean, I like to get to France every year, so I paint scenes of the Auvergne and stuff as well. And from my perspective, it's all about light and dark and shadows. The specific qualities of the light there may be differences, but certainly I find that the sort of physical geography around here and the sort of urban geography, if you like, really lends itself to content for an artist. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I was wondering, the medium, Jonathan, on that particular painting, is that oil?
It is oil paint. It's my paintings kind of start life as acrylic paintings, as an underpainting. But then I very quickly get bored of that. I find acrylic quite difficult to work with, and then I transition onto the oil paint, which has just got richer, much better colours. And we're led to believe as well that oil paint never fades. So talking about when you get into your 50s, you start thinking about your legacy. And I guess I'm at that stage now, thinking what they're going to look like in 30 years' time, say. So I'm pretty much an oil painter. Although,
if I come around this side, Mike,
sure, there'll be quite a bit of glare on that. And it's oil paint's great when it's hot and sunny like this. Often in winter months, you'll notice how long oil paint takes to dry. So I'm working on maybe, between 10 and 20 paintings all at the same time, in all sorts of different stages of completion. But then that sort of work timetable is dictated by the drying time of the oils. Sometimes you can only do so much. But also that's the kind of creative process. I think Mike maybe finds this. Sometimes you have to sit with a painting for months before you know actually how to finish it. It's one of these annoying jobs where it doesn't really have a beginning, a middle and an end like other jobs. The end always seems to be rather elusive. And it's just knowing what to do next is the problem. It doesn't take long in actual fact to put some more paint on a painting. It's a very small surface area. But it's knowing exactly what to do, and sometimes you have to meditate upon a picture for months on and off in order to be able to finish it.
Do you work in different scales? Is this like a normal scale for you, or do you do different sizes? Or
this is a comfortable scale for me. I do prefer to work slightly bigger. I've got pity you can't see them in the gallery in my studio. I've got a couple of really big canvases I'm working on, which for somebody who's used to working on this sort of scale, it's quite an acreage of canvas to cover over. But certainly you get the wow factor with a bigger painting, and I think that, you know, it's something I would like to do more of. But I think, again, whilst this studio is really good and lovely and atmospheric place to work, I think I might have to rent out an aircraft hangar or something just to get up to the scale of picture that I'd like to be doing. Yeah, and using much bigger brushes as well.
Got a question here, are the paintings for sale?
The paintings are all for sale. I often say, actually, that the paintings are only finished when somebody buys them. So the end game for me is, as a practicing artist, is that I have to sell them in order to keep painting, which is the most important thing. So I'm having an open studios show beginning 4th of September through the 12th September in this very venue in Glamis. And I'm hoping that I don't really want a sell-out show, because that would cause me a lot of logistical problems. But it would be nice to sell one or two of them. It's always a great compliment when somebody buys a painting.
And you have a relationship with other galleries in other towns and cities?
Yeah, I do. I've got a long-standing relationship with Eduardo Alessandro's gallery in Bothy Ferry. That's where I kind of started out. But at the moment, I'm also showing up in places like Resipol up in Ardnamurchan. And I've got shows planned for this autumn down in Oxfordshire, Iona House Gallery in Woodstock, and also I'll be showing in Nottinghamshire, a place called Calverton, which I believe is a very fancy art centre. It's just been developed there, so it's nice to be out and about as well. But
do you take commissions?
Commissions are a constant, quite problematic for me actually, because maybe I'm one of these kind of spoilt prima donna types who think that my ideas are probably the things I should be painting, whereas other people's ideas are things I would rather not be painting. But I do take commissions, but currently there's a kind of waiting list for them, and I'm trying to get work my way through the list of stuff to do. So I'm not actively seeking commissions, but sometimes you bend the knee and say, oh yeah, I'll do that for you, you know. And I've just finished a commission this year actually, and a very kind gentleman, he waited 20 years for the picture.
That's it.
Yeah, a picture of the River Isla down at Cooper Angus. But I maintain that the 20-year wait was worthwhile, because a whole load of trees had grown up and it made the scene a lot more interesting.
So you saw the image. The image was in your head before.
That's
it
right.
Took 20 years for it to.
It took 20 years to mature. Yeah. So that one went ahead. It was good to get that one off the books.
I don't know if you can get into some of the detail. Maybe if we put the wee light off and maybe get into some of the detail, just to show the free brushwork and stuff and the texture and stuff.
Sometimes they look like photographs, and other times when you really get close to them, they look very much handmade. Which is, for me, the whole point of painting is the fact that it is a handmade one-off. You know?
Yeah. No, it's great. I love Jonathan's work, and he's a local and an artist myself, and I can see what he's getting from this area, because there's so much. Right, you can stone's throw away, you can go and have this sort of scene. Another stone's throw away, you can get up to the Angus Glens, up to the beautiful hills, and so on. And I like to be out and about, and I think you do as well. So it's like you're always seeing stuff and using it in your creativity, aren't you? Yeah,
absolutely. It always feeds in. If you're a lover of the outdoors, even though you may work from a photograph, you're always feeding into that with what you experience when you're out and about in the countryside.
It's very true about this part of the country, because you've got the urban, you've got the two big cities just up and down, Dundee and Aberdeen. You've got industrial stuff within the cities. You've got the coastal stuff for the fishing villages, which still exist, which are great in Scotland. You still get the active working fishing villages, but also you get the countryside.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, such a contrast in whichever way you look at it. Yeah.
Okay, I think thanks very much for coming on, and pity we couldn't get inside, and but any time you're up here or in the area or coming over to Scotland, come to Glamis Village and pop into the Glamis Gallery and say hello to Jonathan and see his work.
One more question. Has he actually painted the gallery and the studio buildings as a subject?
No, I haven't. I've been out and about all weathers, all times of the year, looking for that perfect composition, and it will come eventually. But it's so picturesque, isn't it? I can't take any credit for the wonderful gardens. That's the Glamis villagers that put those together. But it's a beautiful scene, isn't it? It's really glorious.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
All
Thank
the
you.
best. Take care.
What we could do is, unfortunately we couldn't go inside because of the thickness of the walls, but I don't know if you'd be up for it, but we could go in and maybe later on do a recording inside.
Yeah, we could do that. Bye,
Okay.
Josiah. Bye-bye.
Bye, Jonathan.
Bye. So we're just going to walk a little more up here into the village.
You know what the contrast is here, Mike, when we're doing Edinburgh or Glasgow, you've got that constant thrum of the city behind. There's absolutely no noise.
It's silence. You can just hear the bird song. Or a dog barking maybe in the distance or something like that. But we're heading now into the centre.
Downtown Glamis.
Downtown Glamis, yeah. And we talked about Margaret Bridie, who invented the famous Forfar Bridie. Well, this happened to be her house here, and her bedroom, which is now, we've got the Glamis community shop, but further up here, the cafe, which used to be her bedroom as part of her house. Sorry, they're closed now. Corner shop and tea room.
But we did have a cup of tea there earlier.
Yeah. And the white building coming up to here is the corner shop, and this is where these famous bridies were sold from, made by her.
And the street's got that old-fashioned Scottish name, Kirk Wine.
Kirk Wine, yeah. And we're looking at very much 18th century buildings. Remember what we said about the estate village and the Ninth Earl and moving out the workers from the place to find a new place to stay.
Traditional pillar box.
And it's also a post office as well. It's very picturesque, and we're going to move over to the square.
And this is what people miss out when they come on coaches to a great extent, because they come on a coach and they see Glamis Castle, but they just miss out on this lovely tiny little village with great history.
We're looking at the Market Cross now. This was given the status of a borough of barony by King James IV, and that goes back to the 16th century. And we've got the symbol of giving freedom to trade here, and this is like a Market Cross. But the thing about this Market Cross is that it's a later one. It is 18th century, the actual pillar here. And the lion at the top of the cross, it goes back, would you believe, to the 1970s, because the Market Cross had to be shifted because it was getting in the way of traffic. And as you can see, Glamis is quite a small place. They had to move it, and it was thrown away over a wall and going to be dumped until somebody remembered that it was there. And the BBC, British Broadcasting Company, made a dramatisation of J.M. Barrie's The Little Minister, and it was filmed in Glamis. And as a thank you, they gave money for the restoration of the Market Cross, and you've got the lion, and this lion is very different and special. Normally you'd expect to see a unicorn, but this is an estate village, and the lion is a symbol of the Lion family, or Bose Lion family, Earls of Strathmore, and this was unveiled by Fergus, remember the 17th Earl, who we saw the window in the church in the 1970s. So it's a re-establishment of a Market Cross, and there was weekly markets where all sorts of produce would be sold, and there would be annual fairs as well, when livestock would often be brought into the town to sell, and it was a very lively place. So the Market Cross over here, this hotel, it's all estate property. It's owned by the Strathmore Estates, the Strathmore Arms, and probably Joe has been in here with groups as well. Yep. I've been in here. Sadly, it is closed because of COVID. They were thinking about retiring anyway, but COVID just prompted them to stop, and it's an old building going back to the 18th century, and Joe's just showing you above the lintel there the date. So it's closed today. Now, Glamis is a wee bit like small-scale Edinburgh, if you can draw that comparison. It's got closes, and it's got quite a lot of closes because it's got the vertical market town street set up. And if you can imagine, this was the main road from Forfar, was actually down here through Glamis before they built the bypass. So a lot of the traffic today just goes on the outside, but this used to be quite a busy place. Now if you look here, thatched white cottage, 18th century. Now if you can spot it, there is a bird up beside the chimney stack, and that bird is a heron. Its thatch, or what we call in Scots, segs, S-E-G-G-S, and segs is another name for reed, and if you can connect the thatch with the reeds, then the heron is in a very comfortable place up at the top. This happens to be the home of a retired gynaecologist, so many people make the mistake of thinking that's a stork up at the top, but believe me, it is a heron, right? So, very
before,
picturesque.
don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
No. So we're just walking down this main street. There's no traffic, just as Joe's been saying. And if you look at some of the old street names, if I turn you around to Strappers Close here, Strappers Close, this was the name for a servant, a farm servant, usually male, who would get the farmer's horse and gig together with all the strappings, with attaching the horse to the cart and so on. So you've got Strappers Close. And if we go over here, we've got Steenie Close. Steenie. And Steenie means stony from the old Scots. So Stony Close, but Steenie's Close. So you've got the backlands, just like the usual mercantile centre, where you would have your main street, your centre gathering place at the market cross, and then you would have the small closes leading back into the fertile areas behind, where people would raise livestock, or they would be having their hens, or they would be, you know, whatever. And here, another one here is Quite Green Close. I don't know if you know the game of quoits. Deck quoits, maybe they used to play them on the old ships, old cruise liners. So they used to play quoits in the green space just at the back here of that close, down between the buildings there.
Because in those days, still current, I mean, still contemporary, these little villages all have their gala days where they all come out and they all celebrate a particular day when all the workers get their day off and have the fair, and it would usually be on markets. A big market come in, and it used to be a big thing in these days. So they always had lovely little greens.
Yes.
To go on as well.
They were very proud of the place, of the village, of the houses and so on. And also there was a jail just behind where that white cottage was.
Every town's got to have its jail.
There was a jail, and that was if you broke the Sabbath. If you were enjoying yourself on a Sunday, you'd be thrown in jail. Or if you were intoxicated, too intoxicated, and causing annoyance to somebody else, you'd be thrown in that little jail as well. So a lot of the penalties were localised, even in a small scale like this. Okay.
Oh, you can never get far from the short arm of the Presbyterian Kirk.
No. And this bit
of
lawn,
the long arm of the law, the short arm of the Kirk.
That's right. That lawn, if just behind that pillar and standpipe, would be a bleaching green, where they would bleach the linen to bleach it white usually. And linen, of course, was very popular for the army, for the shirts. If you think of the red coats and the military going back into history, they all had to have their nice white pressed shirts made of linen, and they would have to be bleached white because they naturally didn't come out that way. It's a kind of dull cream colour. Now we're going to end our tour at this iconic gate, and this is the gate to Glamis Castle, and it was opened in 2008, and it commemorates the late Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, who was the mother of the present Queen. She died in 2001 at the age of 101, and her childhood home, of course, was Glamis Castle of the Strathmore family. The gates are open, and if you can maybe see away in the distance is Glamis Castle, These gates were opened in 2008 by the Prince of Wales, or as he's known in Scotland, the Duke of Rothesay, and his wife, who is Duchess of Cornwall. So you can see here, it's very worn. Prince Charles, Duke of Rothesay, opened the gates on 21st April 2008. And this was our beloved grandmother, very much influenced. And of course, Prince Charles feels very close to Scotland. He loves coming here up to Balmoral and wears the kilt and loves all the things to do with Scottish culture. And I think much of that is probably to do with his grandmother, because she was Scottish and she influenced him very much. You can see all the little shields of the different towns or boroughs
Of course,
of
Carnoustie is
Angus.
quite famous because it's just been on the TV for the golf.
Yep. So we're coming now to the end of our tour today of the village of Glamis. Thanks very much for watching, and once again sharing and liking, and we'll be back again on Monday